Hey everybody, welcome back to this live episode of Think Business Live. I'm looking forward to talking to Brent Sprenkle, Senior Managing Director at, hold on one second, all right, there we go. Hey, this is John, welcome back. Some of the stuff didn't go live. Looking forward to talking with Brent Sprenkle, Senior Managing Director at Berkadia and author. We're here to really talk about the launch of his new book, the author of $1 Billion Portfolio. And Brent, what I love about your book is that it is a story about ordinary people with no really real business background who became extraordinarily wealthy in commercial real estate. And let's start there, right? Let's start there, because how does somebody who considers themselves ordinary with no family money, no family backing, what were some of the common themes of grit that you heard as you interviewed many of the people that are in your book?
Well, John, the common theme was that all the people that we interviewed for the book had a different career. Some of them were dentists, they were engineers, they worked for some public company, and they were interested in commercial real estate. They weren't wealthy. They weren't born into wealthy families that owned a bunch of commercial real estate. They started very slowly. They got a job maybe as a resident manager in an apartment building. They started making repairs and learning how to manage buildings. Or they bought a duplex instead of buying a house. They rented a unit out and thought that was a great way to go about life, and bought more small apartment buildings when they could either refinance or had any other money saved up. And then they brought in some partners. My favorite story in the book is about this client, Raul. And Raul's from India, came here to get his master's degree, got a job as an engineer, and found out that if he became a resident manager in an apartment building, he'd get free rent. So he took a job as a resident manager. There's not a lot of work involved in that. And then he found out how to manage properties, make repairs. He found somebody that would sell him an apartment building and help him with the financing. He didn't have a ton of money as a down payment. Bought that building. It worked out really well. He was at a doctor's appointment, and he told his doctor about this great deal he bought. Doctor is like, wow, find me a deal like that. We'll buy it with you. Next thing, he had the doctor go in on the next deal. That deal worked out well. The doctor told a friend of his. The next thing you know, he had 4 investors, and he was out buying other apartment buildings with these investors. Yeah. And it was an ordinary human being who now owns thousands of apartment buildings. I think he's the second or third largest owner of apartment buildings in the entire county of Los Angeles. He started out like anybody with no money, with just no really idea what he was doing, but he just dove in.
I love that story. I just want to highlight you sell multifamily in LA County, but I want to talk about patience, Brent, because as we sit here, it's January 28th, 2021. I think that there are so many people who want instant gratification today. And, in that story, what I heard was, just really taking it how everything kind of happened, and you start small and you find a business partner and you start to grow and grow and grow. What's some advice that maybe some of the people that you talk to today, or even maybe your own advice on how to build a portfolio today, knowing that it's going to take you 5, 10, 15, 20 years to build what you really want?
The simple advice is that you have to start small. The first property you purchase, whether it be a shopping center, an office building, an apartment building, it's not going to be some $50 million property. It's going to be something smaller that is close to home, that you feel comfortable with, and more importantly, that you have the money for.
Yeah.
You don't want to stretch yourself. Just like the stock market, only invest the money that you don't need, that you can lose and not wind up homeless with. Yeah. So, you're investing money that you saved. You're buying a deal that's not huge, but it's big enough for you for your first property. You're going to be scared. It's going to be, oh my God, what am I doing? But at the end of the day, especially if you're buying like a small apartment building, it's not that difficult. You can find a handyman to make the repairs. You can find a property management company to help manage it, rent units. You can find a bank that'll give you a loan. It's not that difficult. It might feel overwhelming at first, but it's no more difficult really than buying a house at the end of the day. So you got to get started somewhere. A lot of people just invest with others. They just have a small amount of money and they'll go buy a piece of a deal that someone else is buying, a syndication. That idea is great, but you don't get any experience with management doing that. You don't get any experience with how to operate a building, how to do the ins and outs, how to get a loan, how to find a deal. I mean, that's really where the magic is involved with, because if you know how to do those 4 or 5 things, that's how you're going to become amazingly successful. That's the key to the business is being able to find properties, figure out whether they work for your model, negotiate a deal, get a loan, buy them, turn them over to management, add value, and then either sell them for a profit or refinance them. It's a proven model that's been done for hundreds of years and will continue to happen.
Talk to me about, all the people that you talk to when you start off and you don't have a fallback and you don't have family money. I want to hear the stories of courage, right? Because real estate, you make money on the buy. You want to, there's so many different ways of looking at real estate. It can be stressful, especially in the beginning for new buyers. And so what were the stories of courage? And I ask not only for the people who are maybe listening to this, starting out their portfolio, but I think anybody, no matter where they are, especially in today's world, because it's a new world, can tap into those lessons of courage.
Well, as far as a specific story of courage, I had a client named David. And David, right out of college, he was supposed to go to medical school, but he took a year off and did some property management work for a relative and kind of decided he liked that business and he stayed in it. And then what happened in the early 90s in LA was a variety of colossal economic nightmares, from riots, earthquake, recession. Things got bad really fast. But David did property management, so he understood how to manage properties, how to lease them, how to renovate them. He was buying buildings that had earthquake damage, and the banks were kind of like giving them to him. Mm-hmm. And they were empty. They had structural issues. They were complete nightmares. And speaking of courage, I mean, David's family and friends were like, "Why are you buying these? These are garbage. What are you doing? Like, go buy some nice buildings. This is like a piece of junk. Like, what are you doing?" And David just had a vision. He knew, like, he's buying a building for next to nothing because nobody wanted it. It was damaged. He had a contractor that could make the repairs. He had a crew that would renovate the units, and he knew he could, if he was into these deals for really cheap, he could rent them for low rents and fill them up quickly. So, in a time where everybody was running from real estate, this guy was diving in. I mean, he was like, how do I buy more buildings? How do I get more money for the down payments? How can I grow faster? So, it's you have to have the courage to buy properties when everyone else is running. I mean, that's always in any business where the best deals are. Yeah. When the stock market's down and you buy, but stock market's even scarier because it could keep dropping. Like in March of 2020, it's like it just keeps dropping. You're like, when do I get in? People were scared, but people just dove in, and maybe the market went down there 20%, but then boom, it went up 50%. And those people are looking like geniuses now. So unfortunately, we didn't see real estate, as far as pricing goes, correct in this last economic disaster that we're still kind of in. But opportunities have and will continue to arise, especially if you're willing to buy distressed real estate. And there's got to be some opportunities in shopping centers, hotels that are just bust because of the recession. So there'll be opportunities out there. There always are. And then there's going to be vacant buildings, and someone's going to have the courage to say, you know what, I have a vision for what I can do with this property. I'm going to buy this vacant shopping center and repurpose it. So there's always opportunities for those that have the vision, the courage, and of course they have to have the financial backing. Yeah.
Brent, what led you to want to write this book? I always love talking to authors about their backstory of what was what drew them to really want to, because this is a lot of work, the interviews and the research. And I mean, writing a book is a huge, typically minimum 1 year undertaking. And so what was it that, that drew you to write the book, and what did you learn about yourself while you wrote the book?
Well, John, one of the main reasons I wrote this book was all these amazing stories of these people. And I would have other clients or people call me like, how did this guy do it? How's this guy worth $1 billion? How did he, I understand he used to work for, he was an auditor. How did he pull this off? What's his story? He come from a wealthy family. How did this happen? And, I'd have to tell these stories to people about how these guys got started. And I just thought, people seem to be interested in this. Maybe I should write a book about how all these people got to where they are now. And then also just include just general information about commercial real estate and how to start out. So we had all these amazing stories from people that own office buildings, shopping centers, apartment buildings, developers, and just felt, this is probably the only way that I can tell these stories, because they needed to be told. There's plenty of real estate books out there about how to get rich quick, but I didn't really see any books about how other people did it and actual tell stories about the household name, at least in the commercial real estate industry, investors, and how they did it. And we also put plenty of what I call mom and pop owners in there that, I have a client who started out as an auditor. He came from, Borneo of all places, and came here right out of college and was working as an auditor, and started buying apartments. So these stories I just thought really were inspirational, because if these guys could pull it off, there's no reason why others can't. And everyone has this whole, to make money, you have to start with money mentality, but that's not really true in any business. If you want to, unless you want to go start a company, that's a different story. But if you just want to dabble in real estate, you can start small and really scale the business very quickly.
I love what you're talking about right now, because it's very inspiring in a time where I think we're seeing more entrepreneurs sprout than ever before because of COVID, and because of people kind of retuning into their own personal values. There just is a rise in entrepreneurship, and I think there will continue to be. And when you talk about, whether it's whatever market it is, anybody can tap into doing something if they take the time and have the willpower and the tenacity and the grit. There is a law of proximity, though, that I think sometimes happens when somebody that you're talking to who started out as an auditor and now is worth $1 billion. There's that law of proximity of, God, how do I get to that person? It's like playing basketball and wanting to be like Michael Jordan after, playing for a week. And so what were some of the guidance and wisdom and advice that your people you interviewed for the book gave for people to really kind of keep the right mindset along the journey?
Well, the mindset is that you really have to have passion for it. If you don't like real estate, you're never going to be good at it. And that's really with any industry. When I was 23, I thought, there's a lot of money to be made in computer programming, but I realized that I don't really like computer programming. So why would I go in that business?
That's a good idea, Brent.
So I was like, I kind of like commercial real estate, so I'll go there. So, you have to have passion for it. You have to have the mindset of this is a journey. You're not going to just start on it and become a billionaire overnight. There's no, all these books about buying properties with zero down. That doesn't exist in the real world. You need money to buy buildings. How do you get that money? Do you start with investors? Do you go buy a couple small buildings and at that point show other people what you did and then encourage them to come in with you? There's a million different ways you can do this, or you can just do everything on your own. It takes longer, but you're in complete control and you can call all the shots because you own all the deals yourself. You're probably not going to get to $1 billion portfolio if you do all the deals on your own, but you're going to get plenty of real estate over the course of 20, 30 years of buying, and you're going to be really comfortable with no one to report to except you and the IRS and maybe the city if they come up for some repairs in your buildings. But you don't have investors calling asking, where's my checks, where are the distributions, why was these repairs made? It's great having investors until problems come up. And then you have to answer questions. But the general theme and what I want to just relay to everybody is this is going to take a long time. You're going
Hmm.
to have to start slow and build up. But very few people go bust with that business model. And almost everyone that goes in that, if they just have the goal of buying one property a year or two properties a year, it's not going to take long for them to have a massive portfolio of commercial real estate that they own.
Yeah.
That's going to be providing for them and their family indefinitely.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And as we sit here, January 28th, 2021, and I don't want you to give any, because somebody could listen to this in a year and say, well, you said this and da 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 da. So I'm not asking for anything specific, because these podcasts become evergreen. But what is, as we sit here in this COVID world and hopefully soon to be post-COVID world, what is the commercial real estate? What does it look like today and over the next 2-3 years, for people who are getting into the business, who are listening to this saying, you know what, I am ready to jump in. What are some things I need to look out for as I am buying my first asset?
Well, the first headwind that we're really warning people about are lease rates.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of property owners that are attempting to sell their commercial real estate because they're aware that rents are falling. So instead of them having to lower their rents, which essentially lowers the value of the building, they're selling the building now before that happens. So you have to do your homework. You have to be very cognizant of what other people are renting units for in the area. If you're buying an office building, you need to find out what everyone else is renting their commercial space for. It's really simple, but you've got to do your homework. We're in a transitioning market. The economy has taken a big whack to commercial real estate owners as far as their operations go. We haven't seen that impact with values, which is really puzzling, but it's no different than the stock market. So that is the biggest thing. People need to be very aware of where lease rates are and compare the lease rates on the building they're buying with what's available on the market.
Yeah.
If the rents are lower than what's on the market, great. If they're higher, that's a deal that you might not want to buy.
Yeah. All right, good. And tell me this. I know I asked this earlier, but I want to ask it again. I want to dive a little bit deeper. What did you learn about yourself writing the book?
What I learned about myself is that I've been very, very conservative. I haven't taken enough calculated risk.
Mm-hmm.
I would make excuses and say, I don't want to buy this building because this, or I don't want to buy right now because of this. I had all these excuses. All the people that were amazingly successful, they were always buying. They didn't say, it is the market feels hot right now. I'm not gonna buy. They just kept buying. They had to work harder to find deals. In 2012, you could just look on the internet and find properties, and it was like shooting fish in a barrel, right? I mean, every deal would work out. You could buy the worst deal and look like a genius 2 years later. Now, I mean, like I just told you, you're buying buildings that someone else may have, pushed the value as high as they can, and they're selling it before the value drops. They're selling a building that might not have any great long-term potential. They're getting out of it now. So you've got to do a lot more homework right now than other times in the market.
Yeah. It's interesting. You're talking about they're always buying. And I would imagine that people who are always buying are also always surrounding themselves with proper advisors and mentors to help them make decisions. And so as a broker, how really, how, what's the question? I'm asking like two questions in my head, but how do you position and let your clients know that you are there to help advise them? Because I think today there's so many moving parts to things. Every person can't have enough mentors or advisors guiding them to look at all the nuances of all the little things. And so how are you there as, for your clients as that mentor and advisor?
Well, that's a very challenging question to answer, but how am I there as a mentor for these people I'm working with is just simply giving them sound advice.
Mm-hmm.
People have a million different ideas. We have clients that are selling apartment buildings here and they're buying buildings in Florida or Texas. They're kind of scared. They're worried about legislative risks that we have here in California, and they just want to go elsewhere. They want to take their money and run. And I'm advising them, like, once you sell these properties here, you're probably out of the game. Like, do you really want to do that? Because, you can drive all these buildings in 15 minutes, and Florida is like, it's going to take you an entire day to get there.
Yeah.
Is that really what you want to do? And it's not like you're selling here at a 4 cap and buying there at a 6 cap. I mean, there's been so much cap rate compression from the fact that so many investors are leaving New York and California, going into these quote unquote red states, that prices and cap rates have just gone. It's almost like you're buying in Los Angeles and Texas and Florida in some of these markets. So my advice to people is just, this is going to end at a certain point. There's a rent moratorium in federal, and it's even worse in California. Tenants don't have to pay rent on apartment buildings and commercial real estate. So owners are suffering because tenants aren't paying rent. So I have to basically remind them that this is going to go away at a certain point.
Yeah.
The reason that these people had a slush fund and saved up money is to help get them through these times. So this recession, unlike 2010, I mean, this was caused by us shutting things down. It wasn't a banking collapse or anything like that. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel here. Now, when tenants start to pay rent, that's up in the air, but we know it's going to happen. We know because this is artificially created. So what I'm trying to mentor people with, if anything, is that we will get through this, and there's going to be better times. And it's not going to take 5 years. This is going to be some slow recovery. It's all of a sudden there's going to be a period where they have to start paying rent again, and they're either going to or you're going to have to leave. So it's going to happen. Yeah,
I hear you on that. Well, I want to get back to the book before we move to another speed round. Somebody who reads the book, and you've done a great job of talking about all the lessons in here, and it's what I've always loved reading, right? I really started reading seriously when I was 18 years old, and I've always been amazed at how for I don't know exactly how much your book is, $19.95, let's say, whatever, a $23 book or a $19 book or a $10 book, that you can get so much knowledge that somebody has walked in front of you. And it'll take you a couple hours to read or listen to. And I love reading about other people's stories. And I think people retain things really well when they read stories, because especially when they're ordinary people, you can connect with them in a much deeper way. And so I'm so glad you wrote this book. I'm excited for everybody to read it, especially those who are looking into getting into real estate and just don't know what those first steps are. Because I think there are no books out there that say step 1, step 2, step 3. That's not how the business is. You only learn the business through story. So I think it's great. I'm so glad that you listened to kind of the voice that led you to write it. My last question about the book is, who's it for?
Well, the book is not for people that have $10 in the bank and want to go buy a giant portfolio of real estate. It's generally intended for people that maybe they own a rental house, maybe they own a duplex, and they want to buy more buildings, and they're just kind of wondering, how have other people done it? How have other people gone from owning, a house and a duplex and owning giant portfolios? How do I get there? So that was really one of the purposes of the book, is to show people that you can do it. You could be an ordinary person with an ordinary job and leverage yourself to buy more real estate with what you already have, with the current resources that you have. A lot of people don't realize their own spending power, and they just don't want to take the chance. So that was one of the main purposes of the book.
That's great. Well, it sounds exciting. All right, Brent, you ready for a quick speed round?
Let's do it.
All right. Your favorite book and why?
I love the Dale Carnegie books. Yeah. I can't get enough of them, because it just goes back to the basics. I mean, these books were written 80 years ago, right? And just human nature doesn't change, and people always want to feel important, and it's just so important to remember the basics of human nature, and that's what those books are about.
What's your favorite one?
If you're making friends and influencing people.
So I have a funny story about that book. So I've been asking, when COVID hit, I gave my kids a stack of books, and I said, every book you read, I'll give you $50 for this pile, $100 for this pile. You got to write a 1-page thing and talk to me about the book for 15 minutes. One of them was How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Wow.
That one was a little bit longer for $100 read, but so my kids didn't read it. But yesterday, somebody, a mentor of my son's, recommended that book, and he started reading it, and he's loving it, and he said, yeah. And so I think it's such an important book for everybody to read. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received?
Best piece of wisdom, a client of mine told me, Brent, you worry too much. You spend too much time worrying about what could happen. You think too much about worst case scenarios, and like everything has always worked out for you. Why do you spend so much time worrying?
All right, so don't worry. Right.
I guess just I came from, there were some tough times previously in my life, and I guess I just fall back to I could wind up like that again.
Right.
So,
yeah. All right. So, all right, good. Last question. One thing everybody, finish your sentence. One thing everybody needs to do in 2021 to get out of their comfort zone is?
change their attitude about something that they don't like.
Okay.
So many people just have this mindset of, I don't like this, I don't like that, I don't like my neighbor, I don't like my colleague. What about them don't you like, and what can you do to change that?
That's good. All right.
Negative energy is all around us, and unfortunately, it's just some people, especially in tough times, we're stuck at home and we just spend time dwelling about things that just aren't healthy. So it's one of the things I'm trying to do is when I start thinking negative thoughts is like, why don't I like that person? Or what is it really more about me or about them? So that's a big thing that I've been trying to mentally think about. And I haven't said yet to anybody, but I just did to you.
All right, good. I like it. Yeah. I mean, we all need to be responsible for the energy we bring in the room. And I think that's a great thing for everybody to work on. Really, getting back to center and getting to a space of, a little bit more peace. I think that's a great way to end this talk. Brent, Senior Managing Director, Berkadia in LA County, multifamily, and author of $1 Billion Portfolio. Brent, tell everybody where they can buy the book, as well as who your ideal clients are.
The book's easy. It's on Amazon. Just go to Amazon, $1 Billion Portfolio. Easy as that. It's Kindle, hardcover, softcover. It's already, I think, like #1 seller in real estate books. So it's going to be easy to find. People I tend to work with, I mostly sell apartment buildings here in LA County. And we're typically spending all of our time helping clients buy and sell and expand their portfolios. So that's what we're doing.
It's great. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking time to be on Think Business. It was great connecting with you. It was great learning more about your book. Thanks for the wisdom. Thanks for the stories. And thanks for everybody who's in your book, right? Thanks for everything that they did to pave the way and to not hold that knowledge, but to share the knowledge, to share the story, to really have a ripple effect and inspire so many people that they may not ever even see. And thank you to you for kind of putting that in a bound book to really help people grow their wealth. And that's some great stuff. So thank you very much, $1 Billion Portfolio author, Brent Sprenkle. Thanks, buddy. Good to see you.
Thank you, John. It was great. Appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. If Brent can help you, reach out to him. How can they contact you, Brent?
They can call me. My number is 310-621-8221. They could email me. Easiest email address is Sprenkle Apartments, SPRENKLE, followed by apartments with an S at the end, @gmail.com.
All right. Thanks, Brent. Thanks, everybody. Have an awesome day, everybody.